What if I told you that the candy you handed out last Halloween has a connection to ancient human sacrifices, that the costumes your kids wear were once used to fool the dead, and that the jack-o'-lantern on your porch represents one of the darkest legends ever told? Yeah. Halloween isn't what you think it is. Most people believe Halloween is just a fun American holiday about candy and costumes. But the truth? The real story behind Halloween is so disturbing, so mysterious, and so unbelievable that it's been hidden in plain sight for over 2,000 years. And today, you're going to learn what really happened. My name is on a mission to uncover the truth, and what I discovered about Halloween changed everything I thought I knew. So buckle up, because this rabbit hole goes deeper than you ever imagined. Let's start with a question nobody asks. Why October 31st? Out of 365 days in a year, why did this specific date become the spookiest night of all? Was it random? Coincidence? Not even close. To understand Halloween, we need to go back. Way back, about 2,000 years back, to a place that would give you nightmares. A cold, dark region in what we now call Ireland, Scotland, and northern France. The people who lived there were called the Celts. Now, the Celts weren't your average ancient civilization. These people believed in things that would make your skin crawl. They believed that the world we see isn't the only world that exists. They believed in a spirit world, a dark world, a world that existed right alongside ours. And they believed that once a year, the wall between these two worlds disappeared. That date? October 31st. They called it Samhain, pronounced Samhain. And it wasn't a celebration. It was a night of terror. Here's what the Celts believed happened on Samhain. On the night of October 31st, the boundary between the living and the dead would shatter. Ghosts would walk the earth, spirits would roam freely, and not the friendly kind of spirits. We're talking about vengeful, angry, demonic entities that wanted to cause chaos, destroy crops, and possess the living. Imagine living in a world where you genuinely believe that tonight, right now, the dead would come back. Your deceased grandmother, your enemies who died, spirits you've never met, all walking among you with unknown intentions. Terrifying, right? So what did the Celts do to protect themselves? This is where it gets crazy. First, they would extinguish every fire in their homes. Complete darkness. Then the Druids, the Celtic priests, would gather on hilltops and light massive sacred bonfires. We're not talking about campfires here. These were infernos, huge, roaring flames that could be seen for miles. And then, they would make sacrifices, animals, crops, and according to some historical accounts, possibly even humans. Now, historians debate this last part. Some say human sacrifice is exaggerated. Others point to archaeological evidence that suggests it happened. Roman writers from that era described the Celts burning people alive in giant wicker structures shaped like men. Sound familiar? If you've ever seen the movie The Wicker Man, now you know where that came from. But here's the thing. Whether or not they sacrificed humans, one fact is undeniable. Samhain was dark, it was terrifying, and it was real to these people. Now let's talk about costumes. You think dressing up as a superhero or a princess is innocent fun? Think again. The Celts wore costumes on Samhain, but not for fun. They wore them for survival. See, they believed that if spirits saw you as a living human, they might possess you, harm you, or drag you back to the spirit world. So what did they do? They disguised themselves. They wore animal skins and heads. They covered their faces with ash and soot. They tried to look like the dead so the dead would leave them alone. Think about that for a second. Every time a kid puts on a Halloween costume today, they're unknowingly recreating an ancient ritual designed to fool ghosts and demons. That's not cute. That's chilling. And it gets weirder. The Celts also believed that these spirits could predict the future. So during Samhain, the Druids would attempt to communicate with the dead, asking for prophecies about the coming winter. Who would die? Who would survive? Would there be enough food? They were literally holding seances on October 31st. This wasn't a party, this was spiritual warfare. Fast forward a few hundred years. Around 43 AD, the Roman Empire conquered Celtic territories. And when the Romans showed up, they brought their own festivals. One was called Feralia, a day in late October when Romans commemorated the dead. Another was a day to honor Pomona, the Roman goddess of fruit and trees. Her symbol, an apple. Now you know where bobbing for apples comes from. But here's where the story takes a major turn. In the 7th century, the Catholic Church was expanding rapidly across Europe, and they had a problem. People were still celebrating Samhain, this pagan, spirit-filled festival. The Church couldn't stop it. The tradition was too strong, too embedded in the culture. So they did what they always did. They absorbed it. In the year 609 AD, Pope Boniface IV established a new Christian holiday, All Martyrs' Day, later called All Saints' Day. And when did they decide to celebrate it? November 1st. The night before, October 31st, also known as All Hallows' Eve. Say that fast. All Hallows' Eve, Hallows' Eve. Hallow Eve. Halloween. Boom. There's your word origin. But the Church didn't just rename the holiday, they tried to change its meaning. Instead of fearing the dead, Christians were supposed to honor them. Instead of making sacrifices to spirits, they were supposed to pray for souls in purgatory. Instead of wearing scary disguises, people were encouraged to dress as saints and angels. But here's the problem. The old beliefs didn't die. People in Ireland, Scotland, and parts of England continued practicing the darker traditions. They still believed that spirits roamed on Halloween night. They still wore frightening costumes. They still told ghost stories and performed rituals. The Church tried to suppress it, but they couldn't kill it. And then, something happened that would change Halloween forever. The Irish Potato Famine. Between 1845 and 1852, a devastating famine swept through Ireland. Over 1 million people died. Another million fled the country, desperate for survival. Where did they go? America. And they brought Halloween with them. Now, here's what's fascinating. Before Irish immigration, America didn't really celebrate Halloween. Sure, some colonial communities had harvest festivals, but nothing like what we know today. But when the Irish arrived, everything changed. They brought their jack-o'-lanterns, they brought their ghost stories, they brought their belief in wandering spirits, and they brought a tradition that would eventually define American Halloween: trick-or-treating. Let me tell you about the original, trick or treat, because it's not what you think. In medieval Ireland and Britain, there was a practice called souling. On All Souls' Day, poor people would go door to door, begging for food. In exchange, they'd promise to pray for the dead relatives of the people who gave them something. Sounds harmless, right? Now let me tell you about guising. In Scotland and Ireland, young people would dress in costumes and go door to door on Halloween. But they didn't just ask for candy, they had to perform. They'd tell jokes, recite poems, sing songs, or do tricks. If the homeowner was pleased, they'd give food or money. But if they weren't pleased, if they refused to give anything, that's where the trick part comes in. These kids would vandalize the property. They'd soap windows, knock over fences, steal gates, and cause chaos. It wasn't playful, it was revenge. By the early 1900s in America, Halloween had become a night of genuine mayhem. Teenagers would roam the streets, causing destruction. Property damage was rampant. Communities were desperate for a solution. So in the 1930s and 1940s, community leaders came up with an idea. Let's give the kids candy. Let's organize the chaos. Let's turn trick-or-treat into something safe and commercialized. And it worked. By the 1950s, Halloween had transformed from a night of terror into a family-friendly, candy-fueled tradition. But even then, darkness lingered. Let's talk about jack-o'-lanterns. You've probably carved a pumpkin before. Maybe you thought it was just a fun autumn activity. But the story behind the jack-o'-lantern is one of the most haunting legends in history. It comes from an Irish myth about a man named Stingy Jack. According to the legend, Jack was a manipulative, deceitful drunk who tricked the devil. Not once, but twice. The first time, Jack convinced the devil to climb a tree. While the devil was up there, Jack carved a cross into the trunk, trapping him. Jack made the devil promise not to take his soul. The second time, Jack tricked the devil into turning into a coin. Jack pocketed the coin next to a silver cross, trapping him again. Eventually, Jack died. But here's the problem. Because of his wicked life, heaven wouldn't take him. And because he'd tricked the devil, hell wouldn't take him either. Jack was condemned to wander the earth forever. The devil, mockingly, gave him a single burning coal to light his way through the eternal darkness. Jack carved out a turnip, placed the coal inside, and became known as Jack of the Lantern. Jack-o'-lantern. In Ireland, people began carving scary faces into turnips and potatoes, placing them in windows to ward off Jack's wandering soul and other evil spirits. When Irish immigrants came to America, they discovered pumpkins. Bigger, easier to carve, and way more impressive. And that's how the Halloween pumpkin was born. But it was never meant to be cute or fun. It was a warning, a protection, a symbol of a cursed soul wandering in darkness. Now let's address something nobody talks about. Why did Halloween become so commercialized? Here's a stat that'll blow your mind. Americans spend over $10 billion on Halloween every year. 10 billion. That's more than Valentine's Day. More than Easter. How did we get here? It started in the 1950s. Candy companies saw an opportunity. Trick-or-treating was becoming mainstream, and they capitalized on it. Marketing campaigns exploded. Costume companies boomed. Retailers created entire Halloween sections. By the 1980s, Halloween was no longer just a children's holiday. Adults started throwing Halloween parties. Haunted houses became major attractions. Horror movies dominated October box offices. Halloween had become an industry. But here's what's eerie. Despite all the commercialization, despite all the candy and costumes and parties, the ancient beliefs never fully disappeared. People still tell ghost stories on Halloween. We still visit haunted houses. We still watch horror films. We still carve faces meant to scare away spirits. Deep down, on some subconscious level, we're still performing the same rituals the Celts did 2,000 years ago. We're still acknowledging that October 31st is different, that it's darker, that the veil between worlds feels thinner. Why? Is it just cultural tradition? Or is there something more? Here's something that'll make you think. Paranormal investigators report that October is their busiest month. Ghost sightings spike. Unexplained phenomena increase. Even skeptics admit that something about late October feels off. Is it psychological? The power of suggestion? The changing seasons affecting our minds? Or is there a kernel of truth in what the Celts believed? I'm not saying ghosts are real. I'm not saying spirits walk among us on Halloween night. But I am saying this. For over 2,000 years, across multiple continents, diverse cultures have all agreed on one thing. October 31st is special. It's a night when the impossible feels possible, when the dead feel close, when the supernatural seems real. That's not coincidence. That's mystery. Let me leave you with one final thought. Every year, millions of people celebrate Halloween without knowing its true history. They hand out candy without realizing it replaced ancient offerings to spirits. They carve pumpkins without knowing they're recreating a legend about a cursed soul. They wear costumes without understanding they're disguising themselves from the dead. Halloween isn't just a holiday. It's a living, breathing connection to our ancient past. It's a reminder that no matter how modern we become, no matter how much technology advances, we're still drawn to the same mysteries our ancestors feared. The darkness, the unknown, the thin line between life and death. And every October 31st, whether we realize it or not, we step into that darkness and dance with it. So this Halloween, when you see kids in costumes running door to door, when you bite into a piece of candy, when you see a jack-o'-lantern glowing in the dark, remember this. You're not just celebrating a holiday. You're participating in a ritual that's older than countries, older than religions, older than the concept of America itself. You're connecting with the Celts, who stood around bonfires, terrified of the spirits they believed surrounded them. You're echoing the Irish immigrants who brought their ghostly traditions across the ocean. You're continuing a story that's been told for 2 millennia. And that story? It's far from over. Because as long as humans exist, we'll always be fascinated by the mystery of what happens after we die. We'll always wonder if the dead can return. We'll always feel that strange electricity in the air on October 31st. Halloween isn't going anywhere. The question is, now that you know the truth, will you ever celebrate it the same way again? If this story blew your mind, if you learned something you never knew before, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now. This channel is dedicated to uncovering the hidden truths behind the things we think we know. And trust me, we're just getting started. Drop a comment below and tell me, do you believe there's something special about Halloween night? Have you ever experienced anything unexplainable on October 31st? I read every single comment, and I want to hear your stories. And if you really want to go down the rabbit hole, click the video that just popped up on your screen. Because the history of Halloween is just the beginning. Wait until you hear about the origins of Christmas. Yeah, that one's even darker. Thanks for watching. Stay curious, stay questioning, and remember, the truth is always stranger than fiction. See you in the next mystery.